The alarm bells rang through the great crystal halls of the Galactic Council. Admiral Thiax's blue scales turned pale as he read the emergency message on his screen. The Villani homeworld was dying, and their people were crying for help. Thiax had seen many battles in his long life. His people, the Altarians, were known as great warriors across the galaxy, but what he saw in the reports made his heart beat faster with fear. The hive swarm had come to the Villani world like a hungry storm. Their bioships covered the sky like black clouds, and their ground troops ate everything in their path, the key. Villani were peaceful people. They built beautiful cities from living crystal and grew gardens that sang in the wind. They had no weapons, no armies, no way to fight back against the nightmare that had found them. Their messages to the Council were filled with terror and despair. "Please help us," the last transmission said. "Our children are hiding in the deep caves. The crystal cities are burning. The swarm grows stronger with every hour. We have maybe 2 days before there is nothing left of our world." Thiax looked at the tactical display with growing horror. Red dots showed where hive bioships had landed. Each dot meant millions of people dead or taken. The swarm did not just kill, they consumed. They took the bodies and minds of their victims and made them part of the hive. Death would be a mercy compared to what awaited the Villani. The Admiral called for an emergency meeting. Representatives from 12 different worlds gathered in the council chamber. Each species brought their best military minds and their most powerful weapons. The Zephyrians showed their plasma cannons that could melt mountains. The Korathans displayed their shield technology that could stop any attack. The Nexari brought their quantum bombs that could crack moons. But as they talked and planned, everyone knew the truth. The hive swarm had defeated them all before. 17 worlds had fallen to the swarm in the past year. Each time the Council had sent their best fleets. Each time those fleets had been destroyed or absorbed into the hive mind. The swarm learned from every battle, adapted to every weapon, and grew stronger with each victory. "What about the Taraxi battle fleet?" asked General Zen, his insect-like eyes clicking nervously. "Gone," Thiax replied. "The swarm took their quantum torpedoes and learned to make them better. Now they use our own weapons against us." "The Pelian mind shields?" suggested another voice. "Useless. The Hive Queen can think through dimensions we cannot even imagine. Our psychic defenses mean nothing to her." The chamber fell silent. Outside the great windows, stars twinkled in the darkness. Soon, if they could not stop the swarm, those stars would go dark one by one as entire civilizations were consumed. Then Captain Vex, a small purple creature with too many arms, spoke up. "What about Protocol 7? Everyone turned to look at him. Protocol 7 was a last resort, something they had hoped never to use. It meant calling for help from the Death World species that had recently asked to join the Council. The humans from the planet Earth. Thiax felt his scales shiver. He had read the reports about Earth. It was a nightmare world where everything tried to kill everything else. The weather could freeze or burn. The ground shook and split open. Poisonous creatures lived in every shadow. And somehow in this hell, a species had evolved that thrived on violence and chaos. The humans had sent ambassadors to the Council just 6 months ago. They seemed pleasant enough with their soft skin and strange customs, but their world-made, seasoned warriors have nightmares. Earth had more ways to die than most species had words for death. "The humans are not trained soldiers," Thiax said slowly. "They are just survivors from a death world." "They are the only ones we have not tried," Vex replied. "Every other species in the galaxy has failed against the swarm. Maybe we need someone who thinks differently." Thiax activated the long-range communication array. The signal would take precious time to reach the human solar system. Time the Villani did not have, but there were no other options left. Far away, in a metal station orbiting Earth's moon, Commander Jinho received the alien transmission. He sat in his small office, surrounded by screens showing data from across human space. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed. The message from the Galactic Council was unlike anything he had ever seen. Jinho called his senior staff to the briefing room. Lieutenant Yunji arrived first, her hair still wet from the shower. She had been training in the combat simulators when the call came. Sergeant Do-Yun followed, carrying a tablet full of tactical analyses. More officers filed in, all of them curious about the emergency meeting. "We have received a distress call," Jinho began, displaying the alien message on the main screen. "A species called the Villani is under attack by something called the Hive Swarm. The Galactic Council has asked for our help." The room erupted in questions. How far away was the Villani world? What kind of enemy were they facing? What resources could the humans send? Jinho raised his hand for silence. "The Villani homeworld is 17 light-years away. We can reach it in 5 days with our fastest ships. The enemy appears to be a hive mind species with adaptive biotechnology. They have already defeated 12 different alien civilizations." Yunji studied the tactical data. "Sir, these aliens seem very advanced. Their weapons and shields are far beyond what we have. If they cannot stop this swarm, what makes anyone think we can?" Do-Yun looked at the battle reports from previous engagements. These alien tactics focus on preservation and efficiency. They try to minimize losses while maximizing damage to the enemy. Very logical. And the swarm adapts to their logic, Jinho noted. Every time the aliens use the same smart tactics, the swarm learns and counters them. The officers looked at each other with growing understanding. Human military doctrine was different from what they saw in the alien reports. Humans did not fight to preserve their forces. They fought to win, regardless of the cost. "How many ships can we deploy?" Jinho asked his logistics officer. "The 7th Expeditionary Force is ready for immediate deployment. 50 ships, 10,000. Personnel, full combat loadout." Jinho nodded. "Send a message to Earth Command. Request permission to deploy the 7th to assist the Villani. Tell them it's a chance to make a good first impression with our new alien neighbors." As his staff prepared for deployment, Jinho looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying and calling for help. The humans would answer that call, just as they always had throughout their violent history. The galaxy was about to learn what humans meant when they said they would help. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Villani system like falling meteors. Admiral Thyax watched from his command ship as 50 human vessels appeared on his sensors. They looked nothing like proper warships. Where Galactic Council vessels were sleek and graceful, these human ships were blocky and crude. They had no energy shields, no plasma weapons, just thick metal armor and chemical rockets. "Are those really their military ships?" asked Captain Zara, staring at the display. "They look like cargo transports." Thyax studied the readings with growing confusion. The human vessels were accelerating toward the planet at dangerous speeds. No sane commander would fly that fast into a combat zone. The gravitational forces alone should have crushed the crews inside those ships. On the human flagship, Commander Jinho stood on the bridge watching the tactical display. The Villani homeworld hung before them like a beautiful blue jewel, but dark. Clouds of hive bioships swarmed around it like flies on rotting meat. Massive organic vessels pulsed with alien life, each one larger than a human city. "Analysis, Yunji?" Jinho asked his tactical officer. Lieutenant Yunji pointed to the largest concentration of enemy ships. "The Hive Queen's vessel is in high orbit. Bioships are covering the entire planet's surface. Ground forces have spread across 4 continents. Estimated enemy strength is over 2 million individual units." "And our strength?" 10,000 humans, sir." Jinho nodded as if those odds made perfect sense. "Do-Hyun, signal all ships. Begin attack approach. Target priority is ground assault, not orbital superiority." Sergeant Do-Hyun relayed the orders. Across the fleet, human pilots received their instructions with grim satisfaction. They were not here to fight a clean space battle. They were here to save the people on the ground, no matter what it cost. Captain Minho led the first wave of atmospheric fighters. His squadron dove toward the planet like stones dropped from heaven. Hive bioships moved to intercept them, firing streams of acid and launching swarms of living missiles. The aliens watching from orbit expected to see the humans retreat or try to find a safer approach. Instead, Minho flew straight into the thickest concentration of enemies. His fighters spread out in formation, each pilot choosing a different hive, ship to ram. They did not try to outmaneuver the bioships or survive the encounter. They simply picked their targets and committed to collision courses. "This is Falcon Leader," Minho broadcast to his squadron. "Remember, we are not trying to come home. We are trying to clear a path for the landing force. Make your deaths count." His fighter screamed through the atmosphere, engines glowing white-hot. A massive hive creature opened its mouth to swallow his ship whole. Minho smiled and activated his warheads just as his fighter disappeared into the creature's throat. The explosion tore the bioship apart from the inside, raining burning flesh across the sky. Colonel Sora watched from the orbital platform as her fighters died one by one. Each death created a gap in the hive defenses. Each explosion cleared space for the troop transports to reach the surface. The aliens had tried to preserve their pilots by avoiding dangerous encounters. The humans deliberately sought out the most dangerous encounters possible. "All transport ships begin landing sequence," Sora ordered. "Target the capital city. The civilians are trapped in the underground shelters there." The human dropships fell like burning hammers toward the planet's surface. Hive creatures swarmed toward them, but the transports did not try to find safe landing zones. They aimed for the spots where the enemy was strongest, using their own ships as weapons when necessary. Deep underground, the Vellani survivors huddled in their crystal shelters. Elder Myra pressed her face to a viewing crystal and watched the sky burn above them. For 3 days they had seen nothing but hive creatures and death. The beautiful crystal spires of their cities lay broken and twisted. The singing gardens were silent forever. Then something new fell from the sky. Ships unlike any the Vellani had ever seen crashed into the ruins of their capital city. Some of the ships were already burning when they landed. Others exploded on impact, taking dozens of hive creatures with them. "What are they doing?" whispered young Kira, her crystal skin flickering with fear. "Those pilots are dying for no reason." Elder Myra watched as the first human soldiers emerged from the wreckage of their transports. They came out fighting, weapons blazing, advancing into crowds of hive warriors that towered over them. The humans were so small compared to the insect creatures, but they moved with deadly purpose. Commander Jinho's boots hit Vellani soil with a heavy thud. Around him, the ruins of the crystal city stretched in all directions. Hive creatures scuttled through the broken buildings like giant spiders. The air smelled of smoke and alien death. "Squad leaders report," he ordered through his communication device. "Section Alpha is on the ground and advancing," came the reply from Sergeant Wu Jin. "Heavy resistance, but we are pushing forward." "Section Beta has secured the eastern approach," reported Lieutenant Hayun. "Casualties are high, but the landing zone is clear." "Section Gamma is engaged with a hive nest," said Lieutenant Taehyun. "We need demolition support to crack it open." Jinho surveyed the battlefield with practiced eyes. The humans had landed in the worst possible position, surrounded by enemies on all sides. Any sensible commander would try to establish a safe perimeter and call for reinforcement. But human tactics were not sensible by alien standards. "All units, advance toward the civilian shelters," Jinho ordered. "Do not establish defensive positions. We are here to rescue people, not to hold ground. Keep moving, keep fighting, and do not stop until every civilian is safe." The human soldiers spread out through the ruined city. They did not try to avoid the strongest hive positions. They attacked them head-on, using explosives and close combat weapons against creatures designed for war. When their ammunition ran out, they used knives and bare hands. When their vehicles were destroyed, they continued on foot. Admiral Thyax watched the battle from orbit with growing amazement. The humans fought like no species he had ever seen. They did not retreat when surrounded. They did not surrender when outnumbered. They simply kept advancing, step by bloody step toward their objective. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the human casualties are enormous. They have lost 30% of their landing force in the first hour. And the hive forces? Also, taking heavy losses. The humans are not trying to survive individual battles. They are trying to do as much damage as possible before they die. Thyax had studied military history for centuries. He had seen brave soldiers and clever tactics. But he had never seen anything like this. The humans were not fighting a war. They were conducting a calculated sacrifice, trading their lives for progress toward their goal. On the planet's surface, Elder Myra felt the ground shake as explosions echoed through the shelter. The sounds of battle grew closer. Then she heard something that made her crystal heart skip. Voices calling in a strange language, getting nearer to their hiding place. The shelter door burst open, and a human soldier appeared. His armor was scorched and his face was bloody, but his eyes were determined. Behind him, more humans spread out to secure the area. "We are here to help," the soldier said in broken Villani language. "Follow us. We will get you to safety." As the civilians climbed toward the surface, they saw the price of their rescue. Human bodies lay everywhere, but the hive creatures lay in even greater numbers. The humans had carved a path of destruction straight to the shelter, leaving a trail of their own blood to mark the way. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant when humans promised to help. Elder Myra pressed her face against the crystal viewing wall of the emergency shelter, watching something that should have been impossible. Outside, in the ruined streets of her once beautiful city, small human soldiers were fighting giant hive warriors in hand-to-hand combat. The humans should have been crushed instantly, but instead they kept winning. Sergeant Wu Jin led his squad around a broken crystal spire, moving toward a cluster of hive soldiers that stood 3 times taller than any human. The insect creatures had razor-sharp claws and armor that could stop plasma fire. Their mandibles could bite through steel. Any rational species would have retreated or called for heavy weapon support. Instead, Wu Jin pulled the pins from 2 grenades and charged straight at the nearest creature. "Remember your training," he shouted to his men as he ran. "Get close, stay close, and take them with you when you go down." The hive warrior raised its claws to strike, but Wu Jin rolled between its legs and detonated his explosives against its armor, softer underbelly. The blast killed him instantly, but it also tore the creature apart and stunned the others long enough for his squad to attack. Private Junho followed his sergeant's example, using his rifle as a club when his ammunition ran out. When the rifle broke, he drew his combat knife. When the knife was knocked from his hand, he grabbed a sharp piece of crystal from the ground and kept fighting. He died with 4 dead hive warriors around him. From orbit, Admiral Thyax watched the battle with growing disbelief. His tactical computers could not understand what they were seeing. The humans were using themselves as weapons, treating their own lives as ammunition to be expended for maximum effect. "This is impossible," Captain Zara whispered, staring at the sensor readings. "The hive swarm has conquered 17 worlds. They adapt to every tactic, learn from every defeat. How are these primitive humans succeeding where we failed?" Thyax studied the data streams flowing across his screens. "Look at the engagement patterns," he said slowly. "Every other species we sent tried to minimize losses while maximizing damage to the enemy. The humans are maximizing damage while accepting unlimited losses. But that is insane. A military force cannot function if it does not preserve itself. The humans are not trying to preserve their military force. They are trying to complete their mission. On the planet's surface, the mission was simple. Reach every civilian shelter and evacuate the survivors. The humans advanced through the city, block by block, building by building, paying for each meter of ground with their blood. Lieutenant Hayun found herself trapped in a crystal tower with 30 Villani children. Hive creatures surrounded the building, trying to break through the walls to reach the terrified civilians inside. Her squad was down to 3 soldiers, and their ammunition was almost gone. "Command, this is Hayun," she reported over her radio. "I have civilians trapped in Tower 7. Request immediate support." "Negative, Hayun," came the reply from Commander Jinho. "All units are engaged. You are on your own." Hayun looked at the frightened children huddled behind her. Their crystal skin was pale with fear, and they made soft chirping sounds that she had learned meant crying in their language. Through the tower's walls, she could hear the hive creatures getting closer. "Listen carefully," she told her remaining soldiers. "I am going to collapse this tower and bury the hive nest underneath it. That will clear the way for the evacuation team to reach the children. Ma'am, if you bring down the tower, we will all be buried too, said Corporal Sangyuk. The children will be safe in the crystal basement. The evacuation team can dig them out later. We will not be safe anywhere, but that does not matter. Our job is to save them, not to save ourselves. Hayun placed charges around the tower's support columns while her soldiers held off the hive creatures. When the explosives were ready, she gathered the children in the strongest part of the basement and activated her radio one last time. Command, this is Hayun. Mission accomplished. Tower 7 will be clear in 30 seconds. Send the evacuation team to basement level. She pressed the detonator button with a smile on her face. The tower came down in a crash of falling crystal, crushing dozens of hive creatures and burying Hayun and her soldiers under tons of debris. But the children survived, and the evacuation team reached them within an hour. Lieutenant Taehyun faced a different problem at the central plaza. A massive hive nest had been built from the remains of the Vellani Parliament building. Thousands of enemy warriors were pouring out of it like water from a broken dam. His company of 100 soldiers could not possibly fight their way through such numbers. Sir, we should request orbital bombardment, suggested his radio operator. Let the ships blast the nest from space. Taehyun shook his head. Orbital. Fire would destroy the civilian shelters underneath the plaza. We need to do this the hard way. He studied the nest through his binoculars. The structure was mostly organic, grown from hive secretions and Vellani crystal. It would be vulnerable to explosives if someone could get close enough to plant them, but getting close meant crossing 100 meters of open ground under fire from thousands of enemies. All squads, listen up. Taehyun broadcast on the company frequency. We are going to assault the nest directly. I need volunteers to carry explosives to the base of the structure. This is a one-way mission. Anyone who volunteers will not be coming back. Every single soldier in his company volunteered. Taehyun selected 10 volunteers to carry the explosive charges. The rest would provide covering fire and keep the hive warriors busy. It was not a complex plan, but it did not need to be complex. It just needed to work. The assault began at dawn. Human soldiers charged across the plaza while enemy fire rained down on them from every direction. They did not zigzag or seek cover. They ran straight toward their target, carrying their explosives like precious gifts. 9 of the 10 volunteers died before reaching the nest. The 10th, Private Yuna, made it to the base of the structure with 2 cracked ribs and a bullet wound in her shoulder. She placed her charges against the weakest point of the foundation and set the timer for 10 seconds. As the countdown reached 0, Yuna pressed her back against the nest wall and closed her eyes. Tell my mother I did my job, she whispered into her radio. The explosion brought down the entire structure, killing thousands of hive creatures and clearing the plaza for the rescue teams. Under the rubble, they found 3 more civilian shelters, with over 200 survivors. Commander Jinho stood in the ruins of the Crystal Palace, coordinating the final phase of the evacuation. His forces had suffered 60% casualties, but they had reached every civilian shelter in the city. Transport ships were loading the last of the Vellani survivors for evacuation to the human fleet. Sir, we have a problem, reported his communications officer. Long-range sensors show a massive hive fleet approaching the system. They will be here in 6 hours. Jinho nodded calmly. Signal all ships to prepare for departure. We need to get the civilians out of here before the reinforcements arrive. What about our mission to eliminate the hive presence? Jinho looked up at the sky, where hive bioships still controlled the orbit around the planet. The rescue operation had been successful, but the larger threat remained. The swarm would simply return and rebuild their nests after the humans left. We are not leaving, he decided. Signal the fleet to evacuate all civilians to safe distance, then return for final assault operations. Sir, with our current losses, we do not have enough personnel for a full planetary assault. Then we will make do with what we have. Send a message to Earth Command. Mission status is rescue complete, elimination in progress. We will finish what we started here. As the last transport ships lifted off with their precious cargo of Vellani survivors, The remaining human soldiers prepared for the final battle. They had saved the civilians, but now they had to save the planet itself. The hive swarm had learned to fear many things during their conquest of the galaxy, but they had never learned to fear anything quite like this. The humans were not done fighting. They were just getting started. 3 days after the last Volani civilian had been evacuated, the planet fell silent except for the sound of wind blowing through broken crystal and the distant rumble of cooling metal. Captain Seong-ho sat alone in what had once been the beautiful central garden of the capital city, carefully bandaging the stump where his left arm used to be. Around him, the bodies of his squad lay where they had fallen during the final assault, on the Hive Queen's ground nest. Corporal Minji had died holding a tunnel entrance so that Seong-ho could plant the explosives. Private Gyeongsu had used his own body to shield the detonator when Hive warriors tried to stop the countdown. Sergeant Nari had spent her last breath calling in artillery strikes on her own position. Seong-ho finished wrapping his bandages and looked up at the sky. No Hive bioships remained in orbit. No enemy creatures moved through the ruins. The swarm that had terrorized 17 worlds was completely gone, erased from existence by an enemy they could not understand or adapt to. The cost had been enormous. Of the 10,000 humans who had landed on Volani 3 days ago, fewer than 800 were still alive. Most of the survivors were wounded. Many would never fight again. But they had won. Against an enemy that had seemed invincible, they had achieved total victory. A transport ship landed nearby, kicking up dust and debris from the ruined buildings. Admiral Thyax stepped out, followed by a team of Galactic Council observers. The alien admiral moved carefully through the wreckage, his blue scales pale with shock at what he was seeing. The entire planet had been cleansed of Hive presence. Not driven away or contained, but completely eliminated. Every bioship had been destroyed. Every ground nest had been collapsed. Every Hive creature down to the smallest spawn had been hunted down and killed. It was the most thorough military victory Thyax had ever witnessed. "Commander Jinho," Thyax called out as he approached the human officer. Jinho looked up from the tactical display he was studying. His uniform was torn and dirty, and a bandage covered half his face, but his eyes were alert and focused. "Admiral Thyax, I was not expecting Galactic Council observers so soon." "We came as soon as our sensors confirmed the impossible," Thyax replied. "The Hive swarm is gone, completely gone. How did you achieve what 17 civilizations could not?" Jinho stood up slowly, favoring his injured leg. "We did what needed to be done. The swarm was a threat to innocent people, so we eliminated the threat. But your casualties, you lost 60% of your force." 62%, Jinho corrected. "But the mission is complete. All Volani civilians were successfully evacuated, and the Hive presence has been terminated." Thyax stared at the human commander with growing amazement. "You speak of losing 6,000 soldiers as if it were a routine operational cost. Every soldier who volunteered for this mission understood the risks. They came here to save lives and eliminate a threat to galactic security. They accomplished both objectives." Captain Zara, who had been examining the remains of a Hive bioship, approached the group with her scanner readings. "Admiral, these results are unprecedented. The humans did not just defeat the swarm, they systematically destroyed every trace of Hive biological material on the planet. How is such thoroughness possible?" Lieutenant Yunji, now the highest-ranking survivor of her unit, answered from where she was coordinating the casualty reports. "We do not fight wars to win battles. We fight wars to end threats. The Hive swarm represented a threat to innocent life, so we removed that threat completely." "But surely there must be limits to what you are willing to sacrifice," Thyax insisted. "No rational military doctrine would accept such losses for a single engagement." Commander Jinho looked at the alien admiral with tired but determined eyes. "Admiral, with respect, you are thinking about this incorrectly. You see our losses as a failure of military doctrine. We see them as the price of success. I do not understand the difference. Your species fight to preserve your military forces while achieving tactical objectives. We fight to achieve strategic objectives regardless of the cost to our military forces. You tried to defeat the swarm while keeping your soldiers alive. We focused on destroying the swarm and accepted that many of our soldiers would die. Thyax walked through the ruins, trying to process what he was seeing. Every engagement he had observed showed the same pattern. The humans did not retreat when outnumbered. They did not negotiate when surrounded. They did not surrender when defeat seemed certain. They simply kept fighting until either they were all dead or their enemy was completely destroyed. This tactical doctrine is unsustainable, he finally said. You cannot continue to accept such casualties in every engagement. We do not accept casualties, Yunji replied. We embrace them when necessary to complete the mission. Every human who died here volunteered for this assignment, knowing they might not return home. And they were willing to die for people they had never met, on a world they had never seen. They were willing to die to protect innocent life and eliminate a threat to galactic peace. That is what soldiers do. A communication signal interrupted their conversation. Sergeant Do Yun, one of the few surviving senior officers, activated his field radio to receive an incoming message from Earth Command. All units, this is Fleet Command, came the transmission. Intelligence reports indicate additional hive fleets in the Corvan and Telax systems. The 12th Expeditionary Force is being deployed to Corvan. The 15th Expeditionary Force will handle Telax. Estimated deployment time is 72 hours. Thyax felt his scales turn cold. You are sending more forces to fight the swarm, after losing so many here? Of course, Jinho replied as if the question made no sense. The threat has not been eliminated. There are still hive fleets operating in other systems, which means innocent people are still in danger, but you have just lost most of your military force. Surely you need time to rebuild, to train new soldiers, to develop new strategies. Admiral, I think you still do not understand what you are seeing here, Yunji said gently. This was not most of our military force. This was one expeditionary force out of hundreds. Earth has been preparing for galactic warfare for decades. We have millions of soldiers ready for deployment. And they will all fight like this, with no regard for their own survival? They will all fight to complete their missions and protect innocent life. That is what we do. As the Galactic Council observers prepared to leave, Elder Myra emerged from one of the rescue transports. The elderly Villani had insisted on returning to see what remained of her homeworld. She walked slowly through the ruins, her crystal skin flickering with grief for her destroyed cities and gratitude for her saved people. Commander Jinho, she said in her musical voice, I wanted to thank you before we leave for the refugee settlements. You do not need to thank us, Elder Myra. We were honored to help. My people will never forget what your soldiers did for us. They gave their lives so that our children could live. There is no greater gift. Jinho nodded respectfully. They died doing their job. That is memorial enough. As the transports lifted off carrying the last of the Villani refugees, Admiral Thyax stood alone among the human survivors. He watched them calmly preparing for extraction, cleaning their weapons and counting their dead with the same professional efficiency they had shown during the battle. These humans had just accomplished the impossible. They had destroyed an enemy that had conquered 17 worlds. They had saved an entire species from extinction, and they spoke of it as if it were routine, just another day's work in their ongoing mission to protect the innocent and eliminate threats to galactic peace. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Thyax began to understand what the galaxy had gained when humanity asked to join the Galactic Council. They had not just gained new allies. They had gained guardians who would never stop fighting as long as there were innocent lives to protect. The humans were not just soldiers. They were something far more dangerous to the enemies of peace. They were willing soldiers who could not be broken, could not be turned, and would never stop coming until their mission was complete. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the liberation of Villani Prime, the great crystal dome of the Galactic Council chambers had never been so quiet. Representatives from 47 different worlds sat in stunned silence as Admiral Thyax finished reading his report. The massive display screens around the chamber showed the same impossible statistics over and over again. 17 hive fleets had operated across the galaxy 6 months ago. 17 extinction-level threats that had consumed entire civilizations and grown stronger with each victory. Today, 0 hive fleets remained. The species that had terrorized the galaxy for 3 years had been completely eliminated, not defeated, not driven away. Eliminated. The final engagement occurred in the Nexus system 48 hours ago. Thyax continued, his blue scales trembling slightly as he spoke. The 23rd Human Expeditionary Force engaged the last known hive fleet, including the original Queen ship. Total enemy casualties, approximately 4 million individual hive organisms. Total human casualties, 9,812. Council member Vex raised one of his many purple arms. Admiral, please clarify those numbers. 9,000 casualties out of how many human soldiers? 10,000 deployed. 188 survivors. The silence in the chamber became even deeper. Representative Cora of the Zephyrian Collective spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. They achieved an almost 98% casualty rate and still completed their mission? The humans do not measure success by survival rates, Thyax replied. They measure success by mission completion. Their mission was to eliminate the hive threat to galactic civilization. That mission is now complete. Elder Myra stood up slowly in the section reserved for refugee populations. Her crystal skin caught the light as she addressed the assembly. Honored representatives, I speak for the surviving Villani people. We have seen what these humans call warfare. It is unlike anything we thought possible. Please elaborate, Elder Myra, requested the council president. When we asked for help, we expected rescue, perhaps evacuation to a safe world while the threat was contained or negotiated with. We did not expect salvation. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. The humans did not come to save some of us. They came to save all of us. They did not come to slow down the swarm. They came to erase it from existence. Captain Zara accessed her tactical files and projected new data onto the main displays. The human approach to warfare defies all established military doctrine. In every engagement, they deliberately chose the most dangerous possible approach to their objectives. The screens showed battle recordings from the 17 different systems where humans had fought the hive swarm. In each case, the pattern was identical. Human forces would arrive, immediately attack the strongest enemy positions, accept enormous casualties, and achieve total victory within days. Look at the Corvin engagement, Zara continued. Standard tactical doctrine would have called for a siege lasting months, gradually wearing down the hive defenses while preserving friendly forces. The humans completed the operation in 36 hours by using their own ships as guided missiles. The Telax battle was even more extreme, added another analyst. The humans detected a hive queen attempting to escape the system. Rather than pursue with their fastest ships, they calculated the queen's course and positioned their slowest, most heavily armed vessel directly in her path. The collision destroyed both the queen ship and the human dreadnought, along with its entire crew of 800 personnel. Council President Nex, an ancient being whose species had survived a dozen galactic wars, spoke for the first time during the briefing. In my experience, such tactics indicate desperation or madness. The humans show neither. They are calm, professional, and methodical in their approach to warfare. How do we explain this contradiction? Admiral Thyax had been asking himself the same question for months. I have spoken extensively with human commanders about their military philosophy. The answer is disturbing but simple. They do not view individual survival as important compared to completing their mission. That attitude cannot be sustained across an entire military force, objected General Zen. Soldiers who expect to die cannot maintain morale or unit cohesion. The humans do not expect to die, Thyax corrected. They simply accept that they might die and they plan accordingly. Their military doctrine is built around the assumption that achieving strategic objectives is more important than tactical preservation of forces. The chamber erupted in whispered conversations as the implications sank in. Every other species, in the galaxy built their military strategies around the idea of acceptable losses. The humans had built their strategy around the idea of acceptable missions. If a mission was worth doing, they would do it regardless of the cost. Representative Jorik of the Korathan Empire stood to address the assembly. Admiral Thyax, what is your assessment of human military capabilities going forward? Will they continue to operate with these tactics? Thyax consulted his notes before answering. 3 days ago, I attended a briefing at Earth Command headquarters. The humans are currently reorganizing their military structure to better serve galactic security needs. They are expanding their expeditionary forces from 25 to 100 units. 100? Vex's purple skin turned pale. That represents a military force of 1 million soldiers. 1 million soldiers trained and equipped for the type of warfare we have just witnessed, Thyax confirmed. When I asked Commander Jinho about this expansion, he said, and I quote, "The galaxy is a dangerous place. There are probably other threats out there that we have not discovered yet. We want to be ready to help when people call for assistance." Elder Myra spoke again, her voice filled with emotion. Honored representatives, I have lived through the terror of facing extinction. I have watched my people hide in caves while monsters destroyed our civilization, and I have seen what happened when these humans answered our call for help. She gestured toward the display screens showing the peaceful rebuilt cities of Villani Prime. They did not come as conquerors or as saviors expecting gratitude. They came as people responding to other people in need. They asked for nothing in return except the chance to help. The question before this council, President Neck said slowly, is how we respond to this new reality. Humanity has demonstrated military capabilities that surpass anything in our recorded history. They have eliminated threats that we considered unstoppable, and they have done so while asking for nothing except membership in our community. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Council, along with permanent seats on the Security Committee and the Military Coordination Board. More importantly, they were formally recognized as the galaxy's primary defense force against extinction-level threats. As the session ended, Admiral Thyax found himself standing alone with Elder Myra in the great observation dome overlooking the Council's orbital city. Through the transparent walls they could see stars scattered across the darkness like diamonds on black silk. Do you think they understand what they have become? Myra asked quietly. I think they understand exactly what they have always been, Thyax replied. They have not changed to meet our needs. They have simply revealed their nature to us. And what is their nature? Thyax was quiet for a long moment, remembering the battles he had witnessed and the soldiers he had met. They are guardians, Elder Myra. Not conquerors or rulers, but guardians. They see innocent life being threatened, and they respond. It does not matter if the threat is a single criminal or an extinction-level swarm. They respond with whatever force is necessary to eliminate the threat and protect the innocent. Far away in the rebuilt cities of 17 different worlds, monuments stood to the human soldiers who had died protecting people they had never met. The inscriptions were simple, carved in dozens of different languages, but always saying the same thing. They came when called. They stayed until finished. And in the depths of space, ancient evils that had slumbered for millennia began to stir, drawn by the scent of a growing galactic civilization. Cosmic horrors that had consumed entire regions of space in ages past started their slow awakening, preparing to feed once again. But the galaxy no longer feared these awakening nightmares. When darkness came calling, when ancient terrors crawled, out of the void between stars, when extinction itself knocked on civilization's door, the people of the galaxy knew exactly who to call. The humans were here now. And humans had a very simple response to things that threatened innocent life. They ended those things completely and permanently, no matter what the cost. The galaxy had learned to sleep peacefully, knowing that somewhere out there, human soldiers stood watch in the darkness, ready to answer any call for help with the same calm professionalism they had shown against the hive swarm. After all, protecting people was what they did. It was who they were. And they would never stop doing it as long as there were people left to protect. The age of human guardianship had begun, and the universe would never be the same.